The 24-year-old Colombian Sergio Higuita has turned his career around 3 years after astounding the planet in his World Tour debut. Thanks to great decision making and the right choice of team, the young monster was able to win his first World Tour, the Volta a Catalunya. And in 2 months he has already achieved the same number of UCI points as he had done in the 2 previous seasons at Education First, where he couldn't seem to find his niche. Well, it does seem though that now he has found it. Do you want to know his story? Sure, without any further ado, let the show begin. At just 20 years old and having excelled in the Manzana Postobon team of the dubbed Wilmar Parades, Sergio Andres Higuita made a step to European cycling with the Fundación Euskadi, a team of which the Bahrain victorious rider Mikel Landa was the president. The Colombian came on loan from Education First, the World Tour team that had the rights to the young rider. He immediately stood out in the orange team due to his characteristics, far away from those of the classic Colombian beetle who only knows how to be a climber. Higuita was fast in the mountains, yes, but he was also an explosive man who knew how to pedal against the clock. A fully fledged multi-tool, you might say, who obtained great results with the Basque team, such as his first victory as a professional in a stage of the Volta ao Alentejo and a 3rd place in the Gran Premio Miguel Indurain. These great results meant that from May onwards he was officially a rider for the Jonathan Vaughters Education First team. His debut could not have been better, and it came right in the gringo lands of his director sportif in the Tour of California. Higuita finished in the top 3 of the 2 hardest mountain stages, and he finished in 2nd place in the general classification, no more and no less than 16 seconds behind Tadej Pogačar, who was also making his debut this season in professional cycling. A great performance that continued in his first big tour a few months later, the Vuelta a España, in which he managed to be top 10 in 5 stages and to win a stage in the Sierra de Madrid after an attack 53 kilometers from the finish line. And he didn't do it by just any old means. In fact, he was ahead of true champions like Primož Roglič, Alejandro Valverde and Superman Lopez. His name had not stood out as much as others in his country, normal when you consider that Egan Bernal had conquered the first Tour de France in the history of Colombia that same year. But for the experts, Higuita was a rider to watch in the future. 2020 starts just as well for Higuita as the previous season had ended. He manages to become national champion in Tunja, pulling out differences of more than a minute over local heroes like Egan Bernal, Daniel Felipe Martinez, Nairo Quintana and Esteban Chavez. And he continues his great vein of form by winning the Tour of Colombia, as well as 2 stages 10 days later against practically the same rivals. His jump to Europe was also brilliant, with a 3rd place finish in Paris-Nice after having shone in the mountains and in the hilly days. But then came the break due to the coronavirus, and Higuita's star suddenly faded. His directors believed that he could be a different cyclist, that he could win a great Vuelta. But this was showing a total ignorance of the rider that they had on their hands. He was a fast, tactically intelligent and an explosive man, but without the necessary depth and the capacity for suffering to dope like Bjarne Riis did and go from an all-rounder to a Tour de France champion. Vaughters decided to take Monster Higuita as a co-leader in 2 different Tours de France. In the first he abandoned, after suffering an impressive crash on stage 15, and in the second, while he did have an impressive competition, finishing in 25th place and finishing 3rd on the stage to Carcassonne, he proved to be far behind the Pogačar, Roglič, Carapaz or the Vingegaard on the big French summits. But it wasn't his fight to be fought, and that determination of the pink men of Education First to try to take him to the fight for these goals ended the patience of a man who, in 2 years, had taken no victories after his magnificent pro debut. It seemed that Higuita's star was going to be like that of Peter the Eel in the music world, fleeting and forgotten in time. But that was until he received 2 offers to change teams. The moment in which our old chunk of coal saved his career. The first offer was from Bora Hansgrohe, The German team that had got rid of Peter Sagan's very high expenses tab and now could make several interesting signings in the market. Despite being another culture, very different from the Colombian one, the Central Europeans offered Higuita the chance to be the leader of the team in other types of competitions. One-day races, for example, and small stage races. They wanted to see the best version of Sergio Higuita. But on the other hand, he had the offer of Movistar, the Spanish team desperate to sign Spanish-speaking names, but with a less secure project for him. Yes, he would get more publicity, presumably also a higher salary, and he would have no difficulties in the language or with Spanish culture. But he knew that if Eusebio and Zui's team signed him, their interest in him would not differ from that of Education First. Movistar was still a team anchored in the times of Miguel Indurain, which has not been able to renew itself in time and which thinks that a documentary series on Netflix can give more prestige to the team than a victory in a classic or a minor tour. Not really the right thing for a cyclist like Higuita, of very humble origins and who does not like the spotlight or pretentious statements. And thus, after a controversial dismissal from Education First, which happened to be solved at the last minute after the use of Bora bicycles while still under contract with the Gringos in a cyclotourism event back home, the short Colombian multi-tool rider left for the Germans and saved his sporting career. Several Bora staff members have worked to determine what their strategy will be for 2022. They are not interested in getting a top 5 as Emmanuel Buchmann did for UCI points. Now they want killers, winners of stages and of classics, looking for the show and for continuous attacks. So far, it has not gone badly for them. They already have twice as many wins this season, and with several different riders. An attractive profile for the spectator, it must be said, and one where Sergio Higuita, who has started the campaign better than ever, fits perfectly. After crushing his rivals in the national championships of his home country, he won a stage in Portugal in the Volta ao Algarve and finished in the top 10 in the Strade Bianchi. A brilliant start to the campaign that's even more reflected in the Volta a Catalunya, where he's undoubtedly the deserved winner. After being top 5 in 3 of the first 4 stages, including the hardest high mountain stages, Higuita followed the wheels of Carapaz as he had done in Boitaul to go more than 6.3 watts per kilo in the climb to Musara, 132 kilometers from the finish line. Higuita found the best possible collaborator, the always brave Richard Carapaz, who finally won the stage ahead of the Colombian, who at the same time secured the overall classification. Long distance attacks, collaboration with rivals, search for the limits, 3 aspects that Movistar directors would never have instilled in Higuita, whom they would surely want to keep on a simmer. Higuita is passion. Higuita is a sweet barbecue cooked over a Bora stove in Germany. Higuita, friends, is Colombia. And after this first great World War triumph, beware, it'll be difficult to put a chain on him, especially in realistic goals, just like this one.